Okay, so we're coming to you live. Today we'll be covering natural theology, animals and man from theological perspectives. I haven't covered this with you guys before, but this will be a new branch. It's been heard of in a general perspective, maybe touched on by a few people throughout church history, but I guess it was better covered on. If you go into Jewish Apocrypha specifically, we're talking about the Book of Autostrates. If you want to find a good version of this one, I would say it would be part 1, which was a full edition of the Old Testament Apocrypha. Now, mind you, I realize that the Apocrypha is not necessarily accurate, and obviously that's why they're Apocrypha, but nonetheless, they're good to learn from their perspectives. A lot of information in there is like pretty much heavy in the general sense. You get to understand historical context. You get to understand how people felt at the time, and there's a lot to it. But to get down straight to what I'm getting at today, okay, in natural theology, we're going to find that there are a lot of implications as to relating animals' behaviors to us, meaning that not from a general perspective that we are all on equal footing, but rather, okay, here's the theological question that I ask you guys as students of theology to ask yourselves. If you truly believe that God made everything for a reason, right? Then everything happens for a reason, right? Everything is made the way it is for a reason, right? So if plants, like I told you guys in the other video, you have 80-something thousand plants, whatever, or 800,000, however many. We only know what 3% of them do. So there's obviously implications as to why these plants, they're not just here to look nice. So there's more than meets the eye. Okay, that's part 1. Okay, now I touched on it last time too. Animals. Animals are created the way they are for a reason. And what I'm getting at is like, okay, think about this. When we look at animals in general, we realize this. God made them all the way they are for a reason. Now think about how animals behave. Most of you guys have seen Animal Planet. Most of you guys have seen, what's his name? Crocodile Dundee gave a good descriptive about how animals behave and gave us upfront shows about it. I mean, there's different, you have all these videos on Facebook of how animals behaved. Okay, well, let's look at the biblical implications. Okay, there's certain animals that provided little to no parenting or let other animals raise their young. Let me give you a demonstration. Ostriches, they'll have kids, right? But they'll have kids in clusters. Like when the ostriches give birth, they all have their eggs or whatever all next to one another. And when they raise a kid, they usually raise a kid that's not theirs. They just grab one from the bunch. Men are the same way. How many of you guys can testify to that? They'll raise other people's kids, but they won't raise their own, right? They lose track of them. Scripture implies the same thing. Okay, let's look at another agenda. Look at how animals behave in the animal kingdom in the general sense. Like, okay, to the little to no parenting. Rabbits, rodents, mice, and majority of fish provide little to no parenting. How many men today in this world do the same, right? Okay, so that's one perspective. Now let's look at outside of that. Outside of that, we're going to see that when we remove the scope, like, okay, let's go into New Testament times. Jesus said, beware of the world, for you may be trampled by swine, right? Now, swine, I don't know if you guys have interacted with pigs before. Swine have the tendency of behaving in a certain fashion. Meaning if you interact with pigs, you'll find out that pigs fight for stuff that's shiny. Check that out. There's a saying in the farming community, you can wash a hog, you can't keep the hog clean, right? And then Jesus said, beware of the world, for you may be trampled by swine. What was he calling people? Pigs. There's a lot of pigs out there. Pigs are never satisfied. You can feed a pig, and it's never satisfied. They fight. They'll even eat their own young if they get that hungry. They eat everything. They don't have, they're real dirty creatures. That's why the saying, you can wash a hog, you can't keep a hog clean. So if Jesus said, beware of the world, you may be trampled by swine, then you're looking at the implication of a behavioral science, right? Of the animal, that you have to study their nature to understand the implications of what Jesus was saying in relation to the moral values of this world. Makes sense? So let's look at swine into men. So men are, okay, so we'll see that a lot of men are never satisfied. I'm using that term not just to identify a gender, but we're speaking of humanity in general. Humanity in a general perspective is what? A lot of us aren't satisfied. A lot of us can keep eating and eating and eating. People that do this spiritually, like, they're not satisfied. They want everything. It's not, we can apply this to material gain, but we know a lot of people out there that never stop eating. Lord knows that my mom shoves food down my throat all the times. Okay, so that's one perspective. Okay, now let's look at another implication of it, though. A lot of us are like swine. Look at the parable. You remember where Jesus had cast out the legion that were in that man, right? When Jesus cast out the legion that were in that man, the demons, they went into what? The swine, right? Now, there's a lot of implications on this, but I'm not going to go into the technical side of this parable now. I'll cover it later. But what did the swine do when they were possessed by demons? They drowned, right? Forcibly, they voluntarily, willingly drowned themselves. Whether to piss the people off and get Jesus to get gone, I doubt. But here we can apply it in a different aspect. There's one way to kill a hog. There's one way to keep the hog clean. The hog got to die. What does scripture say about being who you once were? You got to die to who you once were. So we can apply that parable to a certain perspective. Okay, let's look at natural theology on a different basis. Jesus said, be as wise as serpents, but as harmless as doves. Check that one out. Now that one is pretty intense in the general perspective. Look at this one. Okay, doves are like what? They're really sensitive. They're very, very innocent creatures. If you attack a dove, it will never attack you back. Doves are one of the most innocent, gentle creatures, and the one accepted form of sacrifice for the poor people that's in the Bible. And if you look at their nature, they're so innocent. If you attack their young, they won't attack you. They're so docile. Now look at what Jesus said. Be it wise as serpents. Be as wise as serpents, as harmless as doves. Look at that. Okay, wise. How are serpents wise?
Here's what I found on the...
Serpents, in a general perspective, are like this. Serpents tend to have glands underneath, right, that can sense vibrations in the air. That's one perspective. Perspective number two is this, that serpents have an organ in their mouth that allows them to taste the air to kind of get a feel of what's in the air, right? And that when they stick out their tongue, they're able to sense whether there's prey or predator around, right? So they'll know whether to coil up and prepare to defend or to prepare to strike. So the serpent is wise in a general perspective. Notice this, animals have an extreme sensitivity to magnetism. If you notice that a lot of animals act differently when an earthquake is about to strike. Check that one out, right? They're really sensitive to change. And people don't recognize that animals, and scripture says the same thing, that the animals notice the signs of the times. Check that one out. So here's an outside biblical context of what scripture was talking about within the realm of thinking. Outside of that 1-2 verse, we see be as wise as serpents, right? Serpents coil up, prepare, but notice this, as harmless as doves. Check that one out. So here we see another one. The book of Autostrates in Jewish Apocrypha says this. It says that a Jewish high priest was asked, why are certain animals considered unclean? And I never thought about this. Never once did I ever read the Bible and ever think about why the Old Testament says that specifically, that these animals are unclean and these are clean. Why? I never understood. Okay, because they chew the cud, they're cloven-footed, and the hoof is split, right? That's what it says, but I never thought about why, though. I never thought about the implications until I read the Apocrypha, and I realized, wait, that dude might be onto something. And I examined Scripture again. Look at another one. Paul said, I don't remember where these verses are at. Google them, you'll find them. Paul says this. I'm paraphrasing. Paul said this. He said, men are like dogs. They return to their vomit. Check that one out. See, when animals chew the cud, right? They throw up the food that they digested to redigest nutrients that they may have missed. So here Paul applied this perspective. Men are like dogs. They return to the throw up. So dogs will throw it up and then come back and eat it. So here we're seeing a side of us that we're being compared to animals on a basis all the way from the Old Testament to the New, time and time again. So I believe, and I'm a firm believer, that if you go through Scripture, you will receive the same conviction that I did, that animals are here to teach us about the way that we should not live. Look at the way the animals are. They're fight, they're envious, they're dirty, they do this, that, the other. Okay, let's look at it outside of that perspective. How many men out there have you seen fight for women? Right? Have you ever seen men over there throwing blows behind a female, or females throwing blows behind a man? Y'all seen that? Have y'all seen the animal kingdom do it all the time? When animals, look at lions, when they fight one another, right? For the alpha position, the alpha male will kill, or the new male will kill. When he kills the alpha male, he kills all the alpha male's kids. Look at bears. Look at outside of that. You know, bears, what'll happen is one bear will kill another bear, right? And take his woman. Check this out. And then he'll mistreat that kid. If they got babies, he won't kill the baby, but he'll treat the baby so bad that the baby will leave. The baby will leave because the dad is not caring for that kid. The dad's showing a lot of animosity to that kid. Apply this to perspectives in our lifetime today, into the realm of thinking of our relationships today, on what we go through. Think about that. Think about that. Honestly, apply that to your life today. How many relationships have you seen do that? How many men do you see get with women and mistreat the kids? A lot. I've seen a lot, man. And then the bear, look at the little baby bear, burns off. How many kids have you seen do the same? When they get old enough to leave, they burn off. So this is why I tell you guys, examine, when we look at theology in general, there's so much more than meets the eye to what we think are natural, just whatever. We think these things, we pass these things by and never once consider the implications of why these animals are made the way they're made. And when we look at that perspective, we got to look, when we read, let me give you further evidence. When you read the book of Autostrates, right, in the Jewish Apocrypha, you're going to find, and this is what's interesting, he asked the Jewish high priest, why are certain animals unclean and certain animals clean? The Jewish high priest responded with this. He said, see, take the possum. There's a certain kind of possum that conceives through its ear and gives birth through its mouth. That's what he said. And he said, men are the same way. And I was like, I thought about it for a second. And that's when it hit me. I said, hold on. He didn't just use that. He used rats, mice. He said that they're destructive, that they'll dig holes through clothing, through walls, through whatever, just to get to what they want. In other words, people, he compared that to people. He contrasted it to the way we behave, that we're willing to destroy material things, relationships, people, just to get to what we want, right? And we don't see the implications of that outside of Scripture. When you examine every single animal, study every animal's nature. Go into Google, go into what you have to, and study a certain animal. Pick one. Okay, read about it, how it behaves, how it mates, how it raises its youngs, how it fights, when it fights, whatever. Does it migrate? Is it lazy? Does it move a lot? Look at the sloths. Scripture says that people are like sloths, right? A little, what does it say? There's another verse. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands. So shall your poverty come upon you, right? But when you look at all of these animals implicated, and then it said, look at the four wonders, right? The four wonders, how ants run their little community, their ecosystem or whatever. Look at ants, right? And if I'm not mistaken, it was in Psalms or Proverbs, one of the two, but it's in one of the two for sure, that that the ants and all those things are wise, and it told us to learn from them. He said, Scripture said, learn from these things. And when you look at that, you're like, whoa, hold up. Why, the way, and then it says the four wonders, how ants do this and how the snake, something lays down on the rock in the sun, something like that. But I'm applying this to open your minds as to the different implications of it. When we look at it from this perspective, we have to understand that when we learn from animals, right, we can learn about there's more than meets the eye, not just to their natures. Okay. Now, as I was covering you with you guys last time, and I'll go into greater detail this time. Check this out. So you guys won't think that animals are just as stupid as people think they are. Even though there's been a lot of crazy stuff happening with animals lately, and notice Scripture said that the animals themselves were turned against the people in the end of days. Remember that. Okay, just remember that. But FYI, I'm not telling you to throw your dogs out. Don't do that just yet, okay? Because I love dogs and I love a bunch of animals. So don't you guys getting cruel to what you're doing to your animals right now. But a lot of y'all letting your animals freeze. You're wrong for that. Okay, anyways. Look at this. Okay. A few years ago, there was a woman that had pain in her abdomen, right? Right around her pelvis area. And she had this dog. When she'd come home from work, this dog would come and shove his nose in that area. And she'd start whining. And the chick would push her dog away like, man, what's wrong with you? Push her away. What's wrong with you? Push her away. Push her away. And the dog kept doing it, kept putting his nose in there, And every day she'd throw him outside, and then she'd go do her thing, come back, let him in, and he'd go right to the same spot. But she noticed this, there was always a little weird pain there. Well, the dog kept doing it for like 3 or 4 weeks straight. Finally, the woman was like, you know what? She felt weird, like maybe I should go to the doctor. Because the dog never acted like that. And all of a sudden, for 3 days straight, until she kicked this dog out, this dog kept putting his nose right there in that same spot. So the chick was like, I'm going to go to the doctor. And she did. So she told the doctor, she's like, look, I don't know. I just want you to check this area and find out if there's like some kind of cancer or something there. And she told the doctor what spot. And the doctor told her like, you're young. I think she was like 30 something. And she was like, yeah, but please. And so he said, okay, against the doctor's wishes, she got tested, and apparently she had some kind of cancer in her ovary, in one of her ovaries, whatever. And right on the spot that the dog had always put his nose in. Check that one out. And they found the cancer so early that they were able to safely remove it, and she was good. And the doctor had asked her after everything came and passed, and the doctor had finally asked her, like, how did you know where to look? And she told the doctor, she said, you're not going to believe this, but my dog was acting really, really funny for 3 weeks. And notice this, I want you guys to remember this. Dogs are used as cadavers. They find dead bodies. They can trace scents up to what, 2 or 3 weeks old? Forgive me, Junior, because Junior's our resident border patrol. Forgive me, guys, if I'm a little off on the scent. As far as I know, it's around 2, maybe 3 weeks, might be longer. I don't know. Blood sugar dogs, right? Check this out. They're used as guard dogs. Okay, now look at this. In hospitals today in America, because of this story, what happened with this woman, the doctor told her to bring her dog in. Told her he would refund all the money that she had paid to get tested and all that, and for what happened, and the money that came out of pocket and all that. And they bought the dog. They even paid her. Not to keep the dog, but just to bring the dog to run some experiments. And they bought cancer patients in, right? That had, small, like barely discovered cancer that hadn't spread yet. And to see if this dog would be able to do what he did the first time, to smell the cancer. And the dog went right to the spot on these people too. Multiple people. I think it was like 8 or 9 people that he scented the cancer every time, went straight to the spots. Different spots along the bodies, males and females. So the doctor was like, how could this dog know what to look for? Nobody ever had trained this dog to look for cancer, right? But now they train dogs to find cancers. Did you know they have dogs at hospitals now right? Who can smell cancer at an 85% success rate, compared to machines which are like 43%, take months and months of testing, could miss the testing in general because they got to cut you up, test all that, and do what they got to do, versus the dog. They walk you in there, the dog runs around you, smells you, and tells you you have cancer. 85% success rate. Imagine that. I'm not saying that we need to be more, I'm not saying animals are on equal footing as us. I don't agree with that perspective. But I do agree with this, that for years scientists have perceived a side of nature and the realm of reality that they originally thought were facts. And even facts of science have been obscured by theological implications, because scientists all around the world are being dumbfounded to find that there's stuff that in reality that we can't explain. They recently found a fourth dimension that they were able to move a particle outside of this, right? And it can go back and forward in time, meaning that somehow, some way, it proved that the time travel is possible. And look at the implications. In other words, scientists for years have never figured. Look at people. People thought Einstein was crazy. Einstein was so smart. People thought he was crazy. He's like, no, he's a nut job. And then years later, they find out that what Einstein was saying was true. He was a little off. I'm a big fanatic of science, man. A big fanatic of science. I don't know how many times I gotta tell you guys, I love science, man. Science is my thing. It gets my rocks off. Because look, okay, outside of that, there's so much we can learn from science, man. So much that could help you. You know, look, I just shot Gloria. They got new bionicle eyes that they can make completely blind people see now. Anybody that's blind. And eventually they'll be able to put this in motion. They got clinical trials starting up for that. There's stuff that's coming out that's changing. They found a cure for cancer. There's so much science is done for this world. But notice this. Scientists are not creating new things, but rather discovering what was already in place with God. Science is catching up to what this has been saying for years. And look at the perspectives, the implications. That's why when we look at back to the animals, right? And we look at them, remember this. Scripture tells us to be kind to our animals. It says, for the wicked are cruel to their beasts. That's what it says. So let us be proper stewards of everything. I'm not saying hold it to like pagan reverence, how the Hindus, worship their animals. I'm not saying that. Oh, in other countries, you get killed for killing a cow. I know y'all out there, some of y'all out there probably ate cow meat. Y'all probably be put to death in India. But again, it's that perspective. It's things that we don't recognize outside of the realm of thinking that we never really thought about. Look at this. Did you know in certain countries they don't lead a herd like a lot of people you see with lassos and horses, like cowboys riding horses and lassos and all that? Did you know at certain places they herd animals with singing? Look it up, Google it. That's beautiful, dude. These dudes sing to the cattle and the cattle follow the dude that's singing. They've never put their hands on the cattle. They sing to the cattle. They yodel. And I think it's amazing that a herd could be led through singing. That in other words, there's so much that meets the eye outside of the realm of thinking. Look at the placebo effect. Positive thinking has been proven true through science. Scripture says the same thing. Beware of your thoughts, for they form your life. That's what it says. I'm not saying I'm not a prosperity teacher. But what I'm saying is the implications of Scripture imply that there's certain things that actually, kind of more than meets the eye. Like Gloria always says, watch your words, watch your words. There's people, I used to think the same way. Watch your words. Be careful what you speak. You might speak it into existence. God's got a sense of humor. Remember that. I always believe so. I don't know. I'm a firm believer that God's up there laughing because too much stuff happens that you can't help but laugh at, man. I used to be one of those dudes that would cry. Now I'm like, I laugh through it. I laugh through it. Because that's, I mean, the best way through pain is laughter. That's the best way. People that are going through pain use laughter to disguise it too. People try to hide behind laughing. You see a lot of class clowns in school, probably going through some messed up stuff, or have, and they hide behind it. But we don't consider that. Let's look at animals in general. Let's go all the way back to it, man. I guess I never really thought that animals were on this level, and I would have never believed it, right? But I've seen some things that have blown my mind with animals. And I'm saying some surreal stuff. There was one of my exes had a dog, right? And he was sitting on the couch, and I didn't think anything of it. So I looked at him, and I kept looking at him. I glanced at him, he'd glance at me. I glanced at him, he'd glance at me. He was like some kind of Labrador. I glanced at him, he glanced at me. And then I touched the spot between our legs, right? Like, because he wasn't too far from me. I just touched the spot. I didn't do it like intentionally. I just did it like I was just moving, put my hand down, moved it. And out of the corner of my eye, I seen him move his paw and put it on the same spot and put his paw back. And I looked at him and I'm like, I'm tripping. I said, no. I did it again. I touched that same spot, brought my hand back. He touched the same spot, put it back. And so I put my hand and I kept it there, and he put his paw on my hand. And I looked at this dude and I was like, wow. How many of you guys have dogs that act like people sometimes? And sometimes it gets hard not to feel like they are people, man. Because they have emotions like we do, man. They do, man. I saw a dog be jealous the other day. I ain't never seen a dog. I never paid attention to them like that. Until I seen a bunch of dogs interacting with one another, and one of them was like showboating because he got something else the other dogs didn't. And the other dogs were pissed about it. And I seen it. I seen it in the way they behaved. Okay, now I'll end it on this, and you guys are going to trip out. Check this out. I'm going to read to you guys some verses that I ran across. And for those of you that want to read it, I mean, you can, or write it down. Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verses 18 through 19. It says, I said to myself concerning the sons of men, God has surely tested them in order for them to see that they are but beasts. The New Living Translation says this, I said to myself concerning the sons of men, God has surely tested them in order for them to see that they are like animals. For the fate of the sons of men and the fate of beasts is the same. As one dies, so dies the other. Indeed, they all have the same breath. There is no advantage for man over beast, for all is vanity. Now notice this, I'm not saying, this wasn't implying that we're all on the same level in that general sense. It says that we both have the same end. There's no advantage to one or the other. But here, specifically Solomon, the wisest man in the world, had made a theological implication about God testing us in order for us to see that we are like animals. We behave like animals all the time. Look at men in prison. How many of y'all have spent time behind bars? How many of y'all have watched 60 Minutes, whatever, that show? And y'all see that? You see all that punching, that animosity, that look at monkeys. What do gorillas do and all that? Have you ever seen gorillas? How they go in the jungle and they terrorize each other. They'll hit their chest, they'll wah, and they make all that noise, breaking stuff. Probably throw one monkey that way, throw the other that way, and keep, swinging his arms and screaming, and all the animals, all the monkeys, the gorillas, they climb up the trees in submission, the males. Make sense? Look at that perspective. You see prison, watch 60 Minutes. It's the same. It's in reality, and I'm not saying that show's fake, but I'm saying in the penitentiary, it's the same way. Men are hitting their chest, whoop, shirts off, look big, making a bunch of noise, talking real loud, whoop. And they're like that. They're like gorillas. They click. You seen gorillas attack one of outside of their species, they'll jump. It's the same way. Look at how outside of that theological implications as to our behavior and theirs. You see what I'm saying? It's like there's more than meets the eye. Look at these. Job in chapter 18 verse 3 said this. Why are we regarded as beasts, as stupid in your eyes? Lord, that's pretty tough wording there. Because in a lot of ways we are. Job asked this question. He was asking this about God. But in a lot of ways we are like beasts, man. Look at the way we behave, man. Look at the way people talk to each other. Look at the way we fight over each other. Look at the way animals fight over food, man. Have you seen animals fight in the animal kingdom for leftover body? Have you seen that? Have y'all seen of their own kind, like jackals, when they're feeding and there's not enough left, they'll attack each other. How many of y'all seen families like that? How many of y'all see friends like that? That are real greedy, that attack each other, that want everything. That, you know, that's not friendship, that's not family, man. But there's a lot of people like that. Look at these. There's other ones. Look at this. Do not deliver the soul of your turtle dove to the wild beast. Do not forget the life of your afflicted forever. There is in that implication for us to be kind to our animals. When we look at 2 Peter 2:12, but these, like unreasoning animals, born as creatures of instinct to be captured and killed, reviling where they have no knowledge, will in the destruction of these creatures also be destroyed. Look at that. He was talking about men. But these, like unreasoning animals, born of creatures of instincts to be captured and killed, reviling where they have no knowledge, will in the destruction of those creatures also be destroyed. 2 Peter 2:12. Look at the implication. So I tell you guys today, I challenge you to learn more about nature, to get more into theology in general. You want to get more in tune with the nature, like, you know, those, you know, hippies say, Lord forgive. You want to get more in tune with this world? Then learn to get more in tune with God. Learn why God made everything the way it is. There's nothing wrong with learning, man. I'm a firm believer. I'm a firm advocate to go and learn science, learn history, learn mathematics, learn philosophy, learn whatever you want, man. It's never too late to learn, man. I believe all life is a form of learning, man. You know, you learn so many lessons, so many things. Even when you're not going to school, you learn about everything. Mistakes you made, you learn from those. God willing, you do. You know, Lord, if y'all need prayer over something y'all have not changed over, reach out, please. Please remember to learn from your mistakes. Don't let